welcome to Kit Review Time. Today we've got Airfix's 172nd B17G Flying Fortress. Lovely to see Airfix have sort of tackled this kit. Before, really, we just had the Academy one floating around for all those years, but now there's a few around by various manufacturers, and now Airfix have thrown their towel into the ring and see exactly what they've come up with. So as you can see, nice to see Airfix is back with the beautiful box art as well, right the way through on these. Actually, old school way of showing a little bit of combat, sort of really inspiring the modeler to try and do their best with this particular kit. As you can see, we've got a couple of options down in here. Airfix's standard box as you're looking around it. So we've got a little bit of CAD work showing some of the details, and as we can see, we've got internals in there as well as obviously a full bomb bay as we'd expect. And then running around on here, kit number for this one is A08017. Okay, and some of the markings we can see down there from those, which are Norfolk 1945 with a 100 bombardment group, and with the 91st bombardment group out of Cambridge in 1945. So there we go. Now this is a brand new box and it's still sealed. So Airfix's usual thing on the back, it's just a little bit about their passports and things. So opening up the box, we can see Airfix's normal way, just shoving it in one giant bag. Okay, so we'll just pop them up like that. So to start with, we'll just have a look in here. So we're hoping we've got decals and things in here, which we do. We've got marking sheet and everything else down in there. Now, if you haven't built Airfix in quite a while, the instructions had a nice upgrade last year, which makes them so much easier to follow and working your way through. So as you can imagine, right the way into this one, starting off with up in the cockpit area, working on the floors, the walls, the side walls, the seats, and all the interior for the cockpit as it goes down in there, as you can see. Then we're working our way around on the rest of it, putting in the nose sections, the actual bomb bay with the actual trestle running between the two, and the bombs themselves being fitted in. And then we've obviously got a full sort of wing spar system with the actual bulkheads and everything clipping together. So we have got almost a sort of internal framework which is going to hold this thing together. And obviously with these nice big wing spars as well, like I-beams, it's going to give it the strength it needs as well. So that's being fitted on. Then we've actually got the cockpit section being fitted onto the bomb bay, and with those wing spars, as you can see, very nice way of it all going together. Then we've actually got some more on the internals for the actual radio wireless operator and for the bomber crew being fitted down in there. Obviously there is options, you can have this thing on a stand as well if you did want to do it in flight with their type of thing, but again, it's sort of personal choice on these. And then this one being slightly later version, we've got the glazed areas down the rear, so you're going to have to put a little bit of glazing in there now. Maybe a little problematic fitting this down and in. They're a little bit too big to be done the old PVA glue trick in something on these, but these smaller ones you might be able to get away with that. But you need to fit these in and mask those up. Then we've got that internal structure being fitted into the inside, as we can see, which is a nice little touch. And then working our way right the way through. As we go through on these, as you can see, all the rest of the details being fitted in, and then I've got the bomb aimers compartment, and then obviously working on the guns, the ball turret, very nicely done. Some nice details inside these as well. We'll be interested to see how clear those clear parts are on a curve like that, but as you can see, this actually does fit to the roof as it does in the real thing. Okay, so very nicely done, depending on which way you're going to go around with it. Looks like we do have a movable rudder as well, so it's got that 22 degrees of movement right the way through before buttoning all of that interior design up. Unfortunately, like all these things, chances are you're going to lose a lot of it down in there, but it's nice to see we've got the internal framework of the aircraft as well, so when you are looking across from the gunners, the waist gunners positions, you can see those. And then it's off to the wings, working on the engine mounts and things like that, as we can see. Okay, fitting all of those down in there. Nice to see again, we've got some nice detail, some good in-depth air scoops running down into those as well. And then we've got the ailerons fitted with 12 degrees of movement as well, which is a nice touch. And then we've got like the firewalls for the engine, things like that being fitted. Wing system going down, and then repeated completely the same on the other side. Okay, so that's fitting all those down, as you can imagine. Then sliding them along, which is a nice touch, gives it very good strength, and also alignment issues pretty much taken out of the equation because of this wing spar system. It should give a very nice fit right the way through, and again, it's showing you how those wing spars actually fit so deep into those actual wings. And then over to the other side, working on the tail planes again, you've actually got the movement there, 14 degrees down, 23 degrees of movement up, and then it's about the superchargers being fitted down onto the engine, then the actual engine themselves, okay? So again, don't look too bad, details being fitted down in there. As you can see, it's all you're going to need really from looking down into those, and then as you can see, same for the other side, and then working on with sort of cowl flaps, being fitted to the engine. Looks like, do we have an option open or close? Yeah, you can have the cowl flaps open or closed. These are the flap system that runs just down the back there for extra sort of ventilation and cooling. Okay, so that's those fitted in. Tail wheel being fitted, again, looks quite nice. Looks like it's weight on wheels as well. So it's got that bulged effect to the tyre, which is really nice. And then the main gear ones being fitted down in there as well. And then having those slanted and slotted on. And then getting near the end, so we've got the actual Bombay system. You can obviously have it open or closed with the hydraulic activators, depending on which way you want to actually show it. And then we've got the tail unit, which looks like it's solid glazed, and then you'll be masking up and putting those in. Be interested to see how well that fits on there as well. But it's nice to see we've got good detail running right the way into it, instead of, technically, that's a couple of guns poking out the back that we've seen before. Chin gun being fitted down onto there. Obviously that's the thing with the G, actually has that nice chin turret down onto there. And then obviously we're working our way around for the actual top turret being fitted on, and then the waist guns being fitted in as well. So it's quite a nice touch. It looks like the glass for the outer one can be put in after, which could be a little bit easier. And then obviously last up we've got the actual loading and crew door being fitted in. Okay, and then just the glass around the front. Again, you know, some of these working areas I prefer to see a larger part in glass. It just makes it more seamless around, but it'll be interesting to see how those would actually fit onto there. Landing lights, again, nice detail for the landing lights being fitted down in there. And then this front area, which obviously is lending itself to different versions perhaps of the actual B-17 as time progresses, and Airfix are going to make later releases. Props going on as your little final touch. That's it. See, quite an in-depth aircraft. Again, it's nice to see that Airfix are going along the route now of actually putting in a lot of detail, internals and externals as well. So down here we've actually got the stencil data. Not tons of it, as you can imagine, but there's enough to keep it lively and busy. All right, so that's those ones being fitted on there. And then we've got these markings. So again, if you're into that sort of natural metal finish look, that's something that's really, really nice on the B-17, to have it in this sort of silver right the way through. So that's very nice on that one. And on the other side, if you want something a little bit more colourful, with the gorgeous red sort of, you know, markings down in there, as you can see. Okay, so that's very nice. Decals. Again, it's one thing, I've always said that Airfix's decals seem to be uber flat. But actually, looking at these, they don't look too bad at all. These seem very, very nice. They don't look as flat as normal. Normally they have that dead flat, and I mean it's almost textured flatness to them, but these look about right. They've got that slight bit of shine to them, which helps just to make it sort of blend in better with your paintwork, and it makes it easier to coat when you're going to come in with your flat coats or your satin coats afterwards, because it's more akin to the sort of paint texture you're going for than anything else. But hopefully you can see that, just catching it in the light there, how it's actually pretty much on par with a nice satin finish instead of that dead flat that we've seen all too often with Airfix. But generally looking around, beautiful, totally in register. You know, not like the old school Airfix where they were completely always out of register and, well, horrible. These are very, very nice. Airfix, again, it's one of those things. Last few years, stepped it up, nailed it completely now. Okay, so we have one giant bag full of stuff. Should have that out of the way. Okay. And then in here again, I know I say it each time, that one's not too bad, but always check your bag for loose parts that have come through. Sprue rub is what it calls. Okay, that bag makes those clear parts look horrible. We'll look at those in a moment. Okay, so working our way down on these, let me just move this side camera just down a little bit closer. There we go. So as you can see, not massive, okay, but nice size nevertheless. Again, unfortunately, I was just sort of hoping for a little bit more surface texture. Obviously we got the panel lines, as you can see, right the way through these, no problem at all, but I would just be looking for a little bit more detail. Would have been nice. Again, if we just move into the sort of closer camera, you can see that although we've got all of the actual proper recessed panel lining here, we have no riveting detail whatsoever, which is something where, you know, the actual B17, it lends itself beautifully to all that riveting detail. Now, that's not to say obviously you couldn't go around and put it in, it's just it would have been quite nice to see some of it, because obviously you've got lots of internal details, things going like that on in here, as we can see, but there's very little actually going on the actual skin of the aircraft itself. Now, I know it's a scale issue, this is 72nd scale, it's not like a 48th or anything else like that, or the giant 32nd stuff, but nevertheless I would have liked to have seen a little bit more surface detail down into this one. Internal details for this sparring system I think is lovely, it's gorgeous, it's going to lend itself really, really well, and if you could see into it, it would be very, very nice. A little bit of weathering, a little bit of dry brushing in there, make it pop, it'll look fantastic, but generally no problem at all with any of these. No real flash on it, a little bit chunky on the actual locating pins to actually pop in these in. These are a little bit big, as you can see, they're a bit chunky on these. Would have been nicer if they're smaller, but I think no real problems with it at all. Okay, again, just a little bit disappointing there isn't that surface detail. So what we'd do is, I think if we spin this over, it might be better on the top. Okay, this is the trouble when you have this. This is exactly what we're talking about, because this needs to fit under there because it's caught, and technically what it could do is break that part. That's why we say about separate mags. Okay, so what we have here is the wing detail. Again, we've got no riveting whatsoever on these, but as you can probably see, we do have some very nice panel lining down in there. Quite busy around, obviously around the engines, things like that. Again, I don't know, I'm looking at it thinking, is this a little bit too heavily panel lines? Are they a little bit too big for the scale? Maybe. I've seen finer ones. They're not huge craters and all the rest of it, but definitely not as fine and sort of finesse you might see. Nice to see we've actually got the texture on the actual rudder. Is this the rudder or tailplanes? Tailplanes, isn't it, on these? They're nicely done. Okay, very cool. That is the rudder, sorry, down there. Again, no real problems. I'm not complaining about it. I just like to see a little bit better. As you can see down on here, we've got very nice clean internals. These edges, very nicely done as well. And again, these little sprue gates, it always makes you wonder, although it'll give a nice clean cut because you'll just cut it, then you've got to try and get that flush down in there. Sometimes you can make a little dip, which then causes a little seam line, which really wasn't needed to be there. You know, I'd prefer to see it clipped on like this flat than this way of putting these top tabs on. Yeah, I know you can cut it clean across, but you've got to be knowing what you're doing to get that down in there and everything else. But generally, not too bad. Clean, crisp, precise. Okay, so down on some of the interiors now, if we walk up through the parts, there's the wing spar. Again, very nice type of I-beam down here, giving it great strength and everything else as it attaches to the model. And then obviously we've got some more of the internal components, the actual bomb bay system, the second actual former going right the way through with the first set of I-beams. The bombs, multi-part, 2 parts as you can see, a little bit clunky, shall we say, but again, once they're tucked up in a bomb bay, you're not going to really see it. And then obviously we've got the bomb racks down here at the bottom as it works its way through. Again, no problem. Unfortunately, we have got a couple of ejector pin marks, as you can see down in here, actually on the actual bomb bay doors if they're open. Not so bad, you can get in there to take care of it, but it's a shame that they are actually in there. And that's not too bad. Okay, so looking down on the wing section. So again, it's just one of those things, I don't know, the panel lining just looks a little bit heavily done to me, if I'm honest. So there's the tail planes going down on there, and the actual tail section. Down here we've got some raised rivets running along here where they look very nice, and definitely the skin looks very nice on it as well, on all these areas. These nice intake scoops, and in here as we can see, and some more of the internal details, no problem with those. And again, doesn't look too bad. Just unfortunately, I thought we might just see a little bit more finesse, shall we say. Okay, underside of the wings, as we can see, not too bad at all. Again, no option for dropping the flaps on this guy, but it is 1/72nd, and I'm probably getting my hopes up way, way too high. Very nice indeed. Again, I thought, really, I think if it had the riveting in there, it would help the actual panel lining fade away just a little bit. just to blend everything through, but by the time it's painted and done, I think you'll have no problem with it at all. Again, looking on the insides, nice, clean, crisp, very nicely polished moulds, things like that, they're done. Okay, some more on the little bits. So, down in here, as you can see, we've actually got all the engine parts running through. Okay, some nice details on these though. So, we've got the actual rings. Nice to see we've actually got the quite nicely detailed for the pots running right the way down, a little bit of wiring loom done into those, and then working our way through. We've got the thing with the cowl flaps are being open or closed, whichever way we want to do it, and those nose engine rings just like that. And again on the back side, very nice done, all clean on the insides, a little bit of detail even on the backs, things as we work our way through. Clean mould. Okay, some more of the internal parts again. They're very nicely done, all of those. So looking through, it's a little bit all over the place with how we go. So down in here we've got obviously flight deck on the bottom, down in here, and then obviously working our way up, we've got the chin turret, we've got the stalls for the seating, around the bomb bay area. The guns, again, a little bit clunky, but no problem really. They're all nicely done. Some of the parts almost falling off the sprues, as we can see. The gear, the tanks, things like that, no problem at all. Some of the door bulkheads, we're pretty good with all of those. And then down on the back side again, not looking too bad at all. Very nice on all of those. As I say, no real flash, no sink marks, no nasties in the mould anywhere. Okay, so on this one, as you can see, very nicely done. So we've got the props. Okay, nicely done, good, clean, crisp mould right to the edge. Tiny little burring, but nothing really on all of these. And then just generally working our way down through the engines. Got the superchargers down here on the left. Very nicely done. Some of the details coming through. Again, it's nice to see we've got very fine details on here and not in other places. It's a little bit the kit of two halves, but generally no problem with that at all. That's pretty good. Okay, and then last up, so we do have weight on the actual main gear itself, which is quite a nice touch. And then also as we work our way down, we've got control columns down in here, some of the instrument panels and various different radio equipment for inside the cockpit, and then working our way right the way down in here. We've got some nice detail with these wheel hubs down in there. And as we make our way through, we've got the seats, various items, and nice to see we've got the actual diamond tread on the tyres, and it is flat, so you've got the flat spot bulged weight on wheels right the way through. And the gear, again, nice little touches with some of this gear down on here. Very nicely done right the way through. Again, at least all the ejector pins do seem to be recessed in, or very, very close to being flush, so no real problem with those. And some of these parts, it's strange, are put on very finely, and then some of them are quite chunky for the actual sprue gates as they meet the actual the part itself. But generally they're all on there, they're all in one place and everything. Okay, clear parts. Now this is going to be the make or break with any type of kit like this, purely because if the clear parts aren't that clear, then what's going to happen is it's going to have that real sort of corgi effect, as I call it. The other thing as well is, depending on how they fit to the model, will depend on exactly how they're going to, you know, give good seam lines around them and everything else. The first thing I notice, I have to check this against my lights, because when I look at it through my cutting mat, they look very yellow, but actually when I hold it up to the old proper lights, they are not a problem at all. So here's your clear sprue. Plenty numerous down in here, very different things, so we've got different versions and stuff like that, so just make sure you get the right ones as you make your way through. Okay, but generally, as you can see, they're pretty good. No problem at all. They're very clear. In fact, they're very, very clear. All of these clear parts. Can't really see a problem with any of these. Very nicely done, and as I say, to my eye it looks slightly yellow, but I don't think that is, but luckily on camera it's not showing it either. Okay, but generally I was saying about it would be the wrist, but even these waist doors, they don't look too bad at all. We've got a little bit of distortion down in there, but nothing horrendous. So actually it doesn't look too bad, but again, it's going to be all about this fit. they're very close to, you know, using exactly just on the edges, trying to get it in there. Then you've obviously got to glue them into place. It's easier, I think, to have it slightly stepped away and use a natural panel line so you can paint into it, rather than just having the cockpit sticks right on the top and the edge of it is the edge of the glass, which definitely down here on the B17 does look like it's very, very close in some areas to actually be in. I think I'd prefer it to have it more cut across, or an entire front section, for instance, down here that plugs in, rather than being that close. But again, that would just be my personal choice. And obviously, what do I know? Okay, so there we go. That is Airfix's B17G. Slightly disappointed, if I'm honest. I'd like to see a little bit more surface detail. It does seem to be the thing where Airfix are really nailing it now. Some very nice touches. The internals are coming on quite nicely, but still we're finding the surface skin of the aircraft is just lacking a little bit of something. Maybe it may be just because of the kit, looking at the grey plastic, but the panel lines just look a little bit heavily done, I'm thinking. And again, just a little bit of riveting, things like that around there, just to liven it up a little bit. We know Airfix are capable of it, but again, it's just, I think, missing the beat just a little bit, because it just looks a little bit clunky. But again, that isn't building it. We're going to build it to see exactly what we're going to get at the end of the day. But if you are after a B17G, you want something very nice interior, some nice good clear parts, and then just pop around with a little bit of rosy riveter work, I think you're going to end up with definitely a beautiful B17G. So there we go. That's Airfix's 1/72 Boeing B17G Flying Fortress.